Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. In this episode, I talked to Lisa Reinhardt, founder of Wei of Chocolate and Wei Wisdom. We talk about the path to enlightenment through dark chocolate, meditation, and taking care of your parents. Welcome to this week's episode of the Flower Lounge. I am interviewing one of my very best friends this week, and you guys are going to love her if you don't already know her. I want to introduce Lisa Reinhardt, and I'll just tell you a little bit about her background. And what makes her so amazing is that she traveled in the Himalayas for 11 years, and she lived in monasteries and did retreats in caves. And after all of that amazingness that hopefully we'll talk a little bit about, she came back to the United States to share what she'd learned about meditation. And after she had an aha moment eating chocolate, things took a delicious turn. Now she's founder of Wei of Chocolate, and she delights in giving people permission to eat chocolate every day without guilt. And having compiled reams of research and distilled what exactly differentiates healthy chocolate from candy, she believes that a daily piece or two, I'll throw in 3 or 4, of chocolate can be a path to peace and wellness, as well as a way to bring the benefits of meditation effortlessly into our modern, busy lifestyle. When she's not poring over the latest research on the health benefits of cacao, you can find her traveling to far-off places. Her latest project brings you along with her in her meditation program, where you can see how effortless it can be to bring meditation into every aspect of our lives and make mindfulness as simple and fun as eating a piece of chocolate. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here.
So, as you know, we start out with a little exercise where you close your eyes and you go back to your childhood and think about a flower that you played around or that was your favorite. And think about what you were doing and who you were with and how you would describe that flower in 3 words. And whenever you're ready, share.
Well, the fun thing is I've done this before.
Like a million times.
And instead of going back to my childhood, what came to mind was what I've been doing a lot of lately, and that is hanging out with these incredible tall Florida pine trees. And those have been like my best friends.
I can relate.
Yeah, and so the pine trees it's like that, wow, they're so tall, and they've got their roots in the earth and their branches in the sky. And so it's that feeling of like being totally interconnected and part of all worlds. And then they're swaying in the breeze. So there's a flexibility to them, but they're still so strong. And there's like an unconditional love with them, like they're so always present for you. Every time I go out there, they're still there.
Isn't that great? I love Mother Nature. So this is interesting. Usually when we do the childhood flower, it's a reflection of how you bring your greatest gifts into the world. And I tend to think of the ones that you're most drawn to today are like qualities that you are embodying to a vaster capacity. So interconnectedness in all the worlds, strong, flexible, and then you said, what was the last part?
Unconditional love.
Unconditional love. So does that relate to experiences that you're going through right now? Or do you feel like you're embodying those qualities to a vaster capacity?
I definitely feel it's my aspiration right now, and it's things that I'm working with. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, I guess we should talk about chocolate just so we can like get that on the table. so that listeners can, in case anybody out there doesn't know that you can eat all the dark chocolate in the world and it's not bad for you, can we just talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. It's never a mistake to put chocolate on the table.
So maybe we should rewind and just sort of ask, how did you get to the point of making chocolate? Because I'm going to tell a little secret here because I know her so well. She doesn't really like to cook. She doesn't really like to cook. Isn't that awesome?
It totally didn't come out the way, people think like, oh, you went to culinary school or something. And it's like, nah. Really, it was desperation. No, it came out of having been in Asia and having had these incredible experiences in Asia, diving really deep into meditation and that whole world, and coming back here thinking that, wow, this is it, this is my opportunity to really share something. And it was way before meditation was cool.
I remember those days. Meditation wasn't cool. Flower essences weren't cool. Aromatherapy barely cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, the
so
dark.
Hard.
So it was really, and I was so sad about it because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm looking around and people definitely need and are looking for the things that I knew that it could deliver to them. Who didn't want more peace, more compassion, more love, And every time you bring it up, people get that kind of crazed look in their eye, like, oh God, don't go there, and they'd say, I can't do that. I tried that once, my mind is too busy. I'm not good at it. I don't have time. And so finally, I had the two points came together, and I said, oh, we will do it subversively. And chocolate is always a yes. And what I realized is if you put a really good piece of chocolate in your mouth, you let your body heat melt it rather than chew it, that you will do the same thing you'd want to be doing if you were learning meditation, except you'll do it way better, because where else do you want to be except the present moment when you have a good piece of chocolate in your mouth? So that was the beginning, although in the beginning I didn't tell people that. Because I'd been so kind of burned by this experience of being excited about meditation and having, everybody checking out on me, that I just kept it a secret. And so we started out talking about all the exotic flavors, and we put herbs and spices in them. And then eventually we started putting flower essences in them at the suggestion of a brilliant person.
That's kind of a funny story. We should talk about that.
Yeah.
We were doing farmers markets. Was that it? We were doing farmers markets.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you should put flower essences in your chocolate.
I said,
and
no. I said, that'll never work. I said, what are you talking about? I said, that's crazy. And then you said,
it's always like your friends and family are the hardest to convince.
And I said, what makes you think that would work? I said, you've got your stuff in the water and the alcohol and the drops and the mist. I said, chocolate, why would it work in chocolate? And then you said, why don't you try? Just try. So we did, and it did work. And then when I did a little bit of, delving into chocolate, I found out that when we temper chocolate, it's actually a process of setting up a specific crystalline structure in the chocolate. And it's the crystalline structure that holds the information from the flower essences. And so it makes perfect sense that it works. And
can you just talk about tempering a little bit? Because I know there were some girls here at the party who were asking about, what does that mean, tempering chocolate, and the different kinds of crystals that form?
Yeah, so tempering chocolate is that's the bugaboo. Like, that's the part that makes it hard to do at home, because anybody can melt it down and you can pour it in something and it'll harden up when it's in the refrigerator, and then you take it out and it doesn't take much before it's a little puddle again. And it's like, why did it do that? And that's because it isn't tempered. And it's a weird process where you have to cool it at a certain rate while you're like taking a palette knife almost, and you're wiping it from side to side on something like a cool marble slab. I mean, that's how it was done in the old days. And you sometimes have to seed a batch with some that you've done by hand like that. And once it gets to a certain kind of consistency, and you can tell by looking at it and the color and the consistency and the temperature, then you can throw that in with the rest of it, and it will instruct the rest of the chocolate how to set up. And so it does. And then it follows a certain kind of crystalline structure, and it will hold that until it melts. And for anybody who's ever had something melt in that little drink holder in the car. Right?
No, I still have chocolate in my drink holder.
You know from experience that it does not harden the same way as it was before it melted, right? And that's because it lost the original crystalline structure and nobody told it what kind to reconstruct. And so it went into one of these other kinds that doesn't hold, when you get a good chocolate bar, it has gloss, it has snap, it has, it's a little bit resistant to heat, not much, but more than when it's not tempered. So that's.
And how many different kinds of crystals are there?
I think there's 4, but man, it's actually been a long time since I've done the whole marble thing. That was the most challenging part of it. And I knew it was not my strong point. And so as soon as I could, I offloaded that to someone who was an expert.
So before I really want to circle back around to meditation, because I think that's a really important thing to talk about that people will be really interested in. But just to get this over with, no, just joking. Give me like 10 good reasons why people not only can feel guilt-free eating dark chocolate, but in fact, absolutely should make dark chocolate part of their daily regimen, like as a superfood, as a vitamin. Like, why is it absolutely necessary, actually, that we incorporate dark chocolate into our diets every freaking day? Tell us.
Yes, I know, because it's something that you and I take for granted. I think that most people, there's still a lot of people out there feeling guilt about eating chocolate, and it's like, oh my gosh, like that is so last century. So I mean, the first thing that you need to know, though, is you need to eat the right kind. And if you're eating, and because that totally explains the cognitive dissonance between when somebody tells you chocolate is good for you, and then you're like, I don't know, that kind of sounds like somebody's slimy marketing pitch. And the reason is because it has to be the right kind.
So there's a healthy kind and a not healthy kind.
Exactly. And it's pretty easy. It's
superfood versus dessert.
Yes. And it doesn't mean you can't eat dessert sometimes, but you just need to know the difference and be honest with yourself, because then you can totally eat chocolate every day with wild abandon. And that sounds fabulous. So it's so easy to tell. Okay, so the first thing is, it actually, a lot of it goes down to dairy. And that's why a lot of the chocolate that, like my generation or older, everything we ate as a kid was not healthy because everything had dairy in it. And it's only been the last, 10 or 15 years that you've been able to get chocolate without milk in it. And a lot of people, even to this day, people will say to me, how can you make chocolate without milk? It's really not well known. And the fact is that in the old days, meaning hundreds of years ago, the indigenous people of Central and South America only had cacao with no milk. It was when it went to Europe that they put milk and extra sugar and all of that, and they changed how it was used in society. But what they found out in the early 90s, when a Harvard researcher went down to a little island off the coast of Panama, they found that the people who lived on this island had 18 times less heart disease and 12 times less cancer.
That's huge.
Than their same people who moved to the mainland. So immediately they knew it was not genetic. Okay.
It's crazy.
Everybody totally wound up in this genetic thing, which is, for a large part, a bunch of bunk because of the new science of epigenetics, which is another topic. But in any case, they said, what's going on? And so they looked at things and they said, oh, this is what's going on. These people were boiling cacao beans in water and drinking that every day because their water didn't taste good. So they wanted to have a little flavor. So they were drinking cacao water all day long. So when they moved to the mainland, they still love chocolate, cacao, but they would get it from, processed Western style. I don't know if it was, Nestle's Quick or what, but it was not the good stuff. And it changed their health. So the takeaway from that is that milk is the easiest dividing line between healthy chocolate and dessert. So you definitely want vegan chocolate. That's it. And you can't even just say dark chocolate, because when you read the labels on dark chocolate, even I've seen 85% bars that have whole milk in them, and that will block the absorption of the good things in the cocoa. Just like you can't have some kinds of medication because milk will block it. Same thing with cacao. It blocks all the goodies. Just don't go there. Go for dairy free.
Yeah, you really have to read the label. I know that our mutual friend Allison, she was like, oh, I was just suckered into buying this chocolate from the store because it had these like pretty gold dots on it. She was like, the gold dots got me. I got, and she said, it says dark chocolate, but then when you turn it over on the back, it was like dark chocolate with a milky something sorbet. And so they just like sneaked in the milk. You really have to read the ingredients, right?
Yep, totally. And if you read a lot of grocery store chocolate, you'll get really shocked at what's in there, because there's tons of stuff in there that is not even food. Yeah.
So what's the like top 1 or 2 or 3 reasons why we should avoid, my God, like the mainstream stuff? Like, it's holidays are here, like those Hershey's Kisses are going to be sitting on the bowl at grandma's house.
I mean, honestly, when I see a Hershey's Kiss, I just think, I can't say it probably, but
I know I read your mind. That's terrible.
It's like, don't eat it. I mean, first of all, if you do the melt test, like you put that kind of chocolate in your mouth and you melt it, it's waxy, it tastes terrible. You can't do the melt test. That's why we've all been trained to chew chocolate, because the stuff that we were getting up until now was not good enough quality to let it melt in our mouths. But I mean, the other thing is the organic issue. Like when I first started, I didn't think it was that big a deal, honestly, because I thought, well, there's that pod. How can the pesticides get in there? I found out that cacao is one of the most heavily sprayed crops. And the higher, quote unquote, quality you get, the more pesticides they use, because they're trying to protect the more expensive beans.
Oh my God. That sounds like the information we found out about from our friend in Costa Rica, that the bananas and the pineapples, like you'd think that because they have such huge crops, they have such high quality, but the pesticides are just massive. So I imagine that makes sense.
And when they test it, they find that a lot of it has pesticides, apart from the ones that are allowed, which cause all kinds of side effects that we can go into. They also find ones that are banned, because a lot of this cheap chocolate comes out of West Africa. There's not good regulation. And then, and then we get into the child slave labor, which is really still an issue. Huge. Nobody wants to buy chocolate that's made by child slave labor, but we get into a supermarket, we don't think about it, right? It's like chocolate, everything goes out the window, but these things matter. The organic matters a lot. A lot of people who say they have reactions to chocolate it turns out that they really are having reactions to the pesticides.
Is it like when you hear people say like, oh, I can't eat chocolate, it gives me headaches or migraines?
Yeah, those are the side effects from the pesticides, because they're actually testing cacao as a treatment for migraines. So that, that would indicate that it actually might help. Let's try. Why not?
Any other weird and odd dangers of eating super duper mainstream chocolate?
They put funny substitutes for cocoa butter in there. Like sometimes you'll pick up a candy bar in the supermarket and you'll find something called PGPR. Acronyms are always, a warning sign. That one's polyglycerol polyricinoleate. And
say that 10 times fast.
It's a substitute for cocoa butter, and cocoa butter is good for you. Cocoa butter actually is really a healthy fat, and it tastes good, but they press it out, they sell it to the cosmetic industry, and then they have to fill it, like backfill it with something. And they've chosen this thing, which is not food. It's derived from castor beans. They have to harvest it in hazmat suits. It's crazy stuff, and it's super processed. And I really am suspect of all of these weird fats. It's like people who have problems with clogged arteries and stuff. It's like, maybe it's from the weird fats. We don't know what those things are doing to us.
And how about the GMO issue, not only with soy, but also like
sugar.
Anything I see with sugar, in terms of GMO beets. Yeah. Is that an issue in the chocolate industry?
Huge issue. Most of it is GMO, because if they don't tell you it's cane sugar, then it's beet sugar. You have to assume that. And if it's beet sugar, 95% of the beet sugar crop is GMO. So nobody's saying like, look at my chocolate bar, it has GMOs in it, but hello, and a lot of that chocolate, like if you get a grocery store bar, it might be half genetically modified because it might be 50% cacao, 50% GMO sugar with a little bit of GMO soy lecithin thrown in.
And just because I know you've done extensive research more than anyone else I know, what's like the short bullet list of why the GMO thing is such a big issue? Why should we try to avoid GMO foods? Why? What's the bottom line there?
The biggest thing that you can say for sure is we just simply don't know what they do to us, because our testing system does not have long-term testing. They do like 90-day tests on toxicity. And since nobody keels over in 90 days, they declare it to be safe. And the testing itself is not third party, which means it's done by the people who say that what they're producing is safe. So that's kind of like, it's kind of like having a kid and you say, did you clean your room? And they say, yeah. And you go and look and it's not what you thought it was supposed to be. Yeah. You got to have third party independent testing.
Well, and longer. There's probably a lot of things you can do for 90 days and be okay.
Exactly.
Hang in there.
And they have done some longer term studies in Europe, and what they're finding is downright scary. Like they have studies with rats that about 3/4 of the way through their lifespan, they get enormous tumors. And that makes you wonder, because these days, about 3/4 of the way through a human lifespan, there's a ton of people
getting tumors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So those are all the lovely reasons we'll gently step aside and avoid the super mainstream chocolate. So what are the things we could look? We should look for evaporated cane sugar or coconut sugar, maple syrup, honey, or organic.
Yeah. Yeah. We switched over to organic coconut sugar. And the thing that I love about that is that it's very low glycemic, which means it doesn't spike your blood sugar. Dark chocolate is already low glycemic. And I didn't even know how good it was until I saw a list of the glycemic index of like 300 things. And there were only 10 things that were better than dark chocolate on there. And they're all things that you don't want to eat, like sawdust or, like
lima beans or something. What do you say to folks who are like, oh, I'm diabetic, I can't have sweets?
This is actually perfect for diabetics, because the way we do it in a piece that's like a total perfect experience. You get a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's 2 grams of sugar, which is not enough. I was told by a diabetic, not enough to trigger an insulin response, so it doesn't set up a cycle of craving. So you can totally enjoy it and let it melt in your mouth, and you get to the end, and you don't get into that cycle, like I call it the M&M cycle, like crunch, 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 where's the next? And you can just let it go, and it's amazing. It's empowering. It's so beautiful to be able to eat something, totally love it, totally enjoy it, get to the end, and not feel like enslaved.
That's true. I think most people could relate to, like, if you have ice cream today at 6 p.m., it's like the sugar addiction is deep. Like by tomorrow at 6 p.m., your body will trigger oh, I could have some more ice cream. And then every day your body sort of triggers that thing at 6 p.m. But not once have I ever experienced that by eating your chocolate. Even if I eat 6 pieces a day or more, then the same time tomorrow, I'm not, getting into that cycle of craving.
Yeah. And there was one study done with diabetics, and they gave them the equivalent of about 5 or 6 pieces a day. And they found that it didn't spike their blood sugar at all, and it helped protect their hearts, which is the next worry zone. If you have diabetes, apparently heart disease is the next trouble point. And there was a study done by Harvard that found that having the equivalent of 1 of our pieces of chocolate a day lowered the risk of heart disease by 57%. And I always like to think of that as a game changer, because if it's over 50%, that means it's better to be eating chocolate every day than it is not to. And I think heart disease is really the biggest danger for women, more so even than cancer. And it just goes to show you that we're clearly not eating enough dark chocolate.
Clearly. And can you list off some of the other conditions that, let's say it's the holidays, I'm going to see my older relatives, they all have, health issues popping up. I might want to bring them a bag of chocolate, but then I'd want to explain, what's different about it and why it's good. Like, whether it's, prevention of stroke or a cousin who's pregnant, or can you list off some of the other conditions that chocolate is beneficial for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that that I think it's a great intervention for is when doctors want to put people on statins.
Oh God.
And to be over prescribing those anyway. And the medical literature has found no suggestion at all that they even benefit women, because all the tests were done on men, and when they do it on women, it doesn't happen the same way.
Well, and then people are getting memory loss problems.
Right. And that's going to be huge. And boy,
in a very short time.
They won't even talk about that. Probably. Do you think you'll hear about that mainstream within 5 years?
Oh my God.
I doubt it. I don't think it'll come out that fast. And here we'll have
buried.
So many years of people taking, just being really faithful to their doctors, and then who's going to clean up the mess, essentially?
It's infuriating. And if anybody is particularly interested in statins, there's another previous episode if you search under the Kelly Brogan episode on the Flowerlounge podcast. She goes way more into depth on the statins. So if you're interested in that, check that out.
So important. So right now I'm staying with my parents, and there's a woman who comes to visit my mom who just turned 80. And her doctor was trying to pressure her onto statins. And she said, what can I do? And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you asked. So she's been eating daily chocolate, 1 to 2 pieces a day for the last about 2 to 3 months. And I saw her recently and I said, how did that go? With your blood work. And she said, oh my gosh, she said, my cholesterol dropped 30 points. I said, did you change anything else? She said, no, that was it. And her doctor backed off, and she's happy.
Boom. And this is like not a new story for you. You've heard this several times.
Oh, many times. My own mother dropped at 20 points in 3 weeks. And my dad, who's 93 now, he regulated his blood pressure once I got him on the chocolate train. Yeah. And then, if you have friends, relatives who are pregnant, Yale did a study. They found that the women who ate the most good quality chocolate had 69% less preeclampsia than the women who ate the least chocolate.
That's huge, because there's like nothing for preeclampsia, right?
Right. There's nothing else to prevent it. Usually they just scare you and they say, gee, I hope you don't get this. And it has to do with high blood pressure toward the end of pregnancy. It can be life-threatening, fatal to mother and child. And so that's huge that it can impact it like that. And then a lot of women, they try to avoid chocolate because they think it has too much caffeine, which isn't true. 1 piece has as much caffeine as, a cup or 2 of decaf.
What about weight loss? Folks who are trying to lose a couple extra pounds or watch what they eat clean. What do you say to those folks?
I say this is what you've been looking for. I've had two women who come to mind right away who each lost 65 to 70 pounds each.
Wow.
And both of them were eating 1 to 2 pieces a day. One of them was on a specific low carb diet, and she said this fit totally into her diet. And she said, why would I fall off my diet if I knew I could have amazing chocolate every day? And one of them actually turned around her diabetes. She's no longer diabetic because of it.
So if dark chocolate is so good for the heart and the blood vessels and, prevention of heart attack and stroke, it must also be good for memory, right? Are there any studies about memory?
There's more things coming out. I think that those will be coming out more in the future. But I know from personal experience that if I get to that point where it's like, what was I looking for? Like, what was I going to do when I came in the room? Like that kind of thing. I eat a piece of chocolate and it's like, it actually supplies the brain with the precursors to certain brain chemicals. And it's like things reconnect after that. Specifically, I know the difference if I'm trying to do math late at night or work on accounting or something. I definitely eat a piece of chocolate, and it certainly helps.
That's so great. What about folks who've had heart attacks?
They did studies on that too. they said the survival rate was very, I think it was 2 or 3 times. I mean, it was something amazing. I forget the exact number on that one, but I know that it was remarkable, that even if you've already had a heart attack, it's still not too late to be eating chocolate.
And then for kids, is there any like specific benefits for kids other than that, it's not going to rot their teeth and it'll...
I would say for them, the biggest benefit would be honing their palate, for one thing. So that once they've had really good chocolate, they won't fall off into the candy realm. I mean, I know that you and I know one particular 10-year-old who has been eating very good chocolate since she was able to eat solid food. And she knows the difference. Like when she brought home her bag of stuff from Halloween, I said, you know, eat anything you want, have a bite, and then notice how it makes you feel. And if you like the way it makes you feel, then go for it. And if you don't, then I'll switch out anything you've got for our chocolate. And she tried a few things and she noticed how she felt and she turned it all over to me and got the good stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the other thing is, because of the pesticides in that other stuff, I think that's what creates the ADHD type symptoms, the hyperactivity. It's not so much, well, it could be the sugar because there's more sugar in that kind of stuff too, but it's also those pesticides have been linked to ADHD type symptoms in children.
Well, and then sometimes you get the like red 40 dyes and stuff and kids stuff, right?
Yep.
Which are also hyper making.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yellows, number 5s and all that.
Yeah. Lake. What does lake have to do with anything? Sounds so good. Blue Lake. Oh. So anything else we need to know about chocolate? Well, you put, oh, sorry to interrupt you, but we should at some point cover what makes your chocolate different even from dark chocolate. The herbs and the spices and all those wonderful things.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 9 different flavors. There are 3 that are pure dark in varying intensities. We've got 68% creamy, 70% rich, 80% super dark, and early in 2019, I think we'll have a 75% velvety dark.
Ew.
And then we've got 6 and soon to be 7 flavored ones. Everything from the really popular Himalayan pink salt chocolate to peppermint, citrus, rose, cardamom, lavender, bergamot.
Chai
is the holdover. That one has a lot of texture in it, whereas most of the other ones are really smooth. Chai has organic herbs and spices in it. It's got some things that support the adrenals, like rhodiola, lemon balm, calming herbs, and then cardamom, cloves, cinnamon, like all these yummy spices in it. Yeah, and then soon in 2019, then we're going to have this amazing one that is chaga mushroom.
Yummy.
Which, it's so cool. It's like, what does chaga mushroom taste like, right? Like nobody can kind of pull that flavor to mind, but the result when you put it into chocolate is like this incredible like richness and depth. Like you feel like you're in the forest. It's great.
Wow. I can't wait. When's that one coming out?
I hope soon. I'm
get the Oompa Loompas working on that harder. Yeah. Working harder on that project.
And then all of those, every flavor that we have is infused with LOTUSWEI flower essences, flower elixirs.
I'm sure you get this question a lot, but why did you, like when everyone else is doing bars of chocolate, why did you elect to do pieces?
Yeah, I think that's one of the best parts of the chocolate is it's rounded. It's like a little flower and it fits perfectly in your mouth. So for one thing, you can put it in your mouth. You can just relax and let your body heat melt it. And it's less tempting to chew it when you don't have any little, hard edges, corners sticking out. I also think that roundish shape is very feminine in a way, and it appeals to women rather than breaking off a square. And the other thing I don't like about bars is, I don't know if I'm the only one, but usually you start off and you break off a square and in your mind you're saying, yeah, I'll just have one. I'll just have this one square. And you put it in your mouth and then pretty soon.
No. You eat the whole thing.
break off another one. You know, it's like, and then at the end you feel kind of stupid, right? There's that like guilt feeling and that like, geez, I wasn't going to do it this time. Whereas when you have a round piece, you've got a beginning and a middle and an end, and it's complete in and of itself. And it's that rounded feeling in your mouth. It's just a different experience. I really love it.
And you actually recommend to people to literally just take a minute off to the side and let it melt in your mouth to have similar to a 2-minute meditation?
Yeah. Because I mean, I've timed it. It takes between 2 and 2.5 minutes for a piece of melt in the mouth. And it's interesting what happens because, you know, typically we're in our thinking bandwidth of mind. And this gives us an opportunity without even knowing what we're doing or how we do it. We shift out of that bandwidth and we go into the really present sensory thing. Like you're in there with the chocolate and you're running your tongue along the bottom of it and you're feeling it liquefy in your mouth. And there's not words attached to that. It's just like total experience. And to move your mind out of the thinking bandwidth into the now, the experience of now moment, even for 2 minutes is enough to shift how your day unfolds. And that's actually what gets me really excited.
Yeah, so let's shift gears a little bit to meditation and talk about that, because I know when you first launched your company, meditation wasn't, you know, a trendy thing, and now like everyone's doing meditation. So I wanted to ask you about what is meditation and what is not meditation, because there are so many things out there that are, you know, everyone and their mother's doing meditation right now. So what is true meditation and what is not?
I wouldn't pretend to be the authority on any of this, but I would just say that there are
She's being humble. You're being humble. You're being very humble.
Well, I mean, part of it comes from having seen that other world, you know, like I was in Asia in a really special time. It was after a lot of the masters of the Himalayas had been pushed out of Tibet because of the communist invasion. They were living in Nepal and India, and it was that old generation that had been trained in a really deep traditional way. And I was really lucky to see what I saw, you know.
What did you see?
The results of a lifetime of meditation. And it's palpable. Like when you walk into a room with someone who has reordered their life and their mind according to totally different criteria than we typically think of in the West, you feel it. You feel something in the room that's bigger than what you can see. And things that, you know, I used to read books about what happened in the old days, you know, 1,200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, all these stories about meditators and yogis and the Buddhas and, you know, all kinds of things. And I used to think it was old stories or mythology or, you know, and what I discovered when I was there is that this is still happening. It is still utterly accessible, just as it was before. It is happening now. It was happening then, and it's possible for us. And that's pretty exciting.
Okay, then let me ask the question in a different way. What is meditation? What forms do you practice?
Well, like I said, there's a lot of different kinds of meditation. And people do it for a lot of different reasons. Like I'm amazed when I ask people, like, why do you want to learn, the different reasons that you get. In the West, it's typically, people think it's for relaxation or, you know, something like that, because our lives are very stressful. And sometimes it makes me laugh because I mean, those of us who've been through some of the more traditional forms know that it's a real process. Like there's a lot of unraveling that can occur that's not always comfortable. But wow, totally illuminating. I mean, when I was a kid, the only thing I wanted was really to deeply understand. I just wanted to deeply understand how life was, what it meant, what was possible, what was the highest potential of a human being, and what could happen. And that for me is what meditation makes possible, is seeing. It's like we don't even have good enough words in English sometimes. Because if I say like seeing reality, people are like, I don't know if I want to see reality. But it's different than that.
Sounds like it's like almost like you see it like a map to get from one place to the next. It's like a method to get from here to there. What is the highest potential of a human being?
In a word, it's enlightenment, but what does that word mean? That's the big question. And enlightenment is like the removal of all the barriers, removal of all limitations, allowing everything to fully bloom with that incredible insight and understanding, and held by compassion. It's not just like knowledge. It's not just analytical information. It's like being held in the arms of incredible love and compassion while seeing very, very clearly.
And when you say seeing very clearly, what happens to, say, like jealousy, anger, greed, attachment?
All of them in the end are met with compassion, because they arise out of a misunderstanding. People are looking for happiness, and because of either faulty information, incomplete information, somehow they think that those things will get them closer. And the reality is it's driving them, it's driving a wedge so that they're further away.
Faulty information, even meaning like patterns from childhood.
Oh yeah. It's not even necessarily conscious. And so when you understand that, it's just arising out of misunderstanding, it's easier to hold everything in compassion. Yeah.
So why would someone want to meditate? Why? You just sit there and you breathe. Kind of a waste of time. No, I'm just kidding. But why would someone want to meditate from your perspective? Having done it, how many years have you meditated?
More than 30.
And you are one of the rare friends I have. Let me count them on my fingers. One who actually has done a solitary retreat in a cave in the Himalayas. What on earth would make you, A, spend so much time meditating, and B, do it in a cave with a little mouse all by yourself?
I think
you gotta love meditation to do it in a cave with a mouse.
Right. That's funny. I think that there is that kind of like lightly gnawing feeling that there's something more. There's something more. And that's the impetus to meditation. It's like, I know there's something more. And it's either something that I can do, I need to do, I'm here to do, or something that I haven't discovered, or something I haven't understood. But I think we feel it very clearly when we're young. Teenage years, we're searching so hard. And at a certain point, sometimes we get discouraged because maybe the people around us never got that need met either. And they inadvertently kind of try to close the door or squelch that in us, or we just don't get the answers that we need. We get disappointed, but if we can go back and find that something that we need to know, feeling,
sometimes doesn't it also come through suffering? I mean, in my own case, I can say in my own personal experience, that was definitely true. So like the first 24 years of my life, just like starting at age 7, just like feverishly feeling like I was in the wrong place. There was something I was missing and I needed to find something.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally figuring out what that was I was looking for when I was 24. But after that point, I feel like for me personally, it's a huge driver has been suffering. So like when I experience great pain or grief or see myself repeating similar patterns over and over that don't bring me happiness, that in a way sort of like brings me to my knees enough to be like humble and truthful and honest with myself enough to know, okay, this way isn't working. And then from there, like this wellspring of like, well, then let's find the right way. Like, what is it?
Yeah.
So like for the listeners, because we all experience suffering on some levels, can you describe either a method or just a framework or perspective of thinking when shit hits the fan and you're just like alone with yourself going like, oh, fuck this thing again. And it's so painful. How can you use that to wake up?
Yeah, that's a great access point. And I've met a lot of people recently, a lot of women like my age who are getting to middle age. And a lot of women have this feeling like, shit, I should have had it figured out by now. I thought I was supposed to know what I was doing by now. Why don't I have it figured out? And they start beating themselves up about it. And I think that's really, like you say, that's part of that suffering. That's part of a doorway. And honestly, it's not that you're supposed to have it figured out by now. It's really, this is now our time to figure it out. There is no lost time. We don't, I mean, oh my goodness, if we gave ourselves the opportunity, we would beat ourselves up continually about not doing something. You know, it's like that old thing, like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago and the second best time is today.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's like, no, the time is now. There is no going back. It doesn't matter. But right now, we're aware of it right now. So when there's that kind of pain, that one is always the tip off to me that there's some misunderstanding here. Pain is like the signal that there's a misunderstanding. And if I can like penetrate that misunderstanding with clarity, every time it has released the pain and opened up an insight. So it's not like a punishing pain. It's like a, hey, you know, it's like that little signal. It's like
blossoming pain, opening pain.
Yeah, if we turn toward it instead of away from it. You know, like you know this better than anybody. It's like our society does not teach us to sit with what's uncomfortable.
No, not at all.
Does
run! Netflix, eat, drink alcohol, smoke, sex, vices.
Yeah.
Just don't look at it.
Oh no.
Just put it in the closet.
and that's wow. And it's like, that is the jewel. Like if we can in that moment notice, you know, like take a breath and notice that we want to escape, that's fine, you know, and still like sit with it just a little longer. Sit with it just a little longer. The other day it was so interesting because remember you sent a new flower essence, and it was one that you know, I think I can say I'm on the flower essence test team, right? When you have a new one that you need to know more about. And I was taking it, and I had this afternoon of being like overwhelmed with loneliness. Just like waves of loneliness, and like the tears are running down my face, and I'm like kind of like hiding in different places from my folks, and I couldn't explain it. And I noticed my mind, so I'm like noticing my mind, like wanting to find a story, so looking for the story, like where's the poor me story? Couldn't find it, and then I noticed, the second thing I noticed was all the escapes that I wanted. Like, can I eat something? Can I watch something? Should I call somebody? And I like ticked off all of these like escape mechanisms. And it was hilarious because there was still that sense of perspective, which is what I love about the flower essences, is they give you like enough spaciousness and perspective so that you can watch what you're doing, and then you can actually make another choice rather than falling into the distraction. I could watch myself, like offer myself distractions and not go for them and give it a little bit more space. And then it was a few hours later that I had the aha, and I just started laughing out loud when I realized that it was the flower essence that you had given me, and it kind of purified.
Liberated.
Yeah, it liberated a whole bunch of old stuff. And all we need to do is allow it, watch it, feel it. I'm not saying don't feel it. And I mean, I was wrong in this for so many years. Like, I used to be the master of suppression and like clamping down on feelings. And so you can totally feel it and totally let the waves of loneliness and sadness and all of that move through you, but don't be fooled by it, and then ask yourself the question, who is it who feels lonely? And even just asking that question, or whatever strong emotion you have, who is it who feels anger? Who is it who feels frustrated? And then just notice what happens when you ask that question. It's not that you're looking for the definitive answer, it's not like you're trying to take names. Me! but asking that kind of open-ended question, and then feeling and watching how you shift inside is really, really helpful.
And I just want to come back to something that you'd said earlier, because I want to make sure that it's clear. And you said something about seeing suffering with clarity, because I think in the Western world that means like intellectually I have the knowledge of it, I figured out why this is happening and it's all clear to me what it, and in fact what you are talking about is observing something shift and move in your body as clarity versus having the whole game all figured out.
Right. I'm really trying to let go of the I've got to figure it out pattern. Yeah. But there is, in the observation and experience, there is a seeing that doesn't rely on analysis.
So can you give us some examples in your personal life now? I mean, I know you're temporarily not in Phoenix where you usually live. You're staying with your parents. Like how I know you do sitting practice every morning or sitting meditation practice, but how do you bring that into your everyday moments with, taking care of your parents in their golden years? And, we all know and go home with our parents. Sometimes that brings things up. How do you, like, do you have any funny stories or moments where you have to like really lean on your practice to kind of get through?
Yeah, it's so fun. I mean, so here I am, and my parents are both in their 90s, and my mom needs a little more help than my dad. He's 93, and he's pretty strong and pretty present. And my mom is present like most of the time, but totally unpredictably. Like you don't know when you're going to encounter, like a blip in the radar. So. And then the beautiful thing is, like, it was at Ram Dass or that expression, like, if you think you're enlightened, then go home for Thanksgiving. It's like, this is like one of your biggest challenges, right? Whenever you go visit family. So here I am. And I've gotten past that point. Like, I think we all kind of reached that point, like midlife, where it doesn't upset us anymore what our parents do, right? I mean, when we're younger, it's like we were super identified with them. So when they do something embarrassing or something we disagree with, we feel personally threatened. And then there becomes that period where they're cool. Whatever they do, that's their thing. It doesn't influence, fine. And we have a lot more tolerance and acceptance. And now it's like gone into a different zone, right? So now they're teaching me and they're helping me on levels that they could never anticipate. And that is that they're showing me, in some ways, like the fruits of certain behaviors. Like it used to be physical. Like I'd look at them and say, oh, this is the result of decades of this kind of diet. versus this kind of diet, because my mom and my dad eat differently. And so then I'd look at their health situations, and then it would be, oh, this is the result of this amount of activity versus this amount of physical activity. And then I'd look at that and I'd say, like, geez, I need to move more. Like I want to make choices now that'll influence later. So it used to be a lot more physical. And now I'm watching like the mental patterns, and it is hilarious because they're doing the things that I do, except they're much more, they're not cloaked, like we're very good at kind of like covering up our tracks, and like, I wasn't really doing that, but and so they're not hiding it. And it's also much more exaggerated because of the age. And so for instance, one of my lessons lately has been about blaming and stuff. And I'm on this thing where I'm noticing, my mom is just hilarious. Okay. So she's in a little electric scooter, and that thing, it can go quite fast. And she had to put a thing on it so it wouldn't go too fast, because it was kind of like riding a motorcycle through the house. That was the visual for what was going on. And she was running the door jams. And actually the reason I'm back here is because she ran into the piano and flipped the scooter. And
oh my gosh,
she needed a little more help after that. She's recovered, so things are okay. But
wild woman.
Oh my God. My aunt says you ought to put tires around the outside of it like a tugboat, It needs airbags. But there was one time when she had plowed into one of the kitchen cupboards and done some damage in the kitchen. And then she had to go tell my dad, which is like, her biggest fear. So I see her motor off into the living room, and I hear the conversation, and she says, well, Tony, she says, I ran into the kitchen cupboard and broke something. And he reacts. And then she said, but I wasn't the only one in the kitchen. And I'm thinking, I was in the kitchen. Okay, so somehow she's pinning this the scooter thing on me. Hilarious. So the one the other day that was really, really funny, which is kind of like, okay, on the edge of TMI here, but I'm on the poop squad, so I take care of like a lot of the pooping cleanup stuff. And she hates to poop because it's just such. And she's like, well, I have to poop. She said, but I think it's because of your father.
Wait, I'm not wrapping my brain cells around that one.
So somehow she was blaming the fact that she actually had to poop on my dad. It's like, I don't think it works that way. So anyway, whenever one of these things happens, it is like so hilariously out of the realm of possibility that it makes me ask the question, where am I doing that in my life? Like where am I sliding a little blame off, into another direction? And how is that impacting my life? And what I've come to realize is that when I blame, growth stops. Like there is no growth happening. There's no awareness happening. There's no progress possible. That's like blame is a full stop. And that's why it's so dangerous. And at the same time, I mean, I'm not like, I'm beyond judgment with my folks. It's like, they are the cutest, gnome-like people in the world. And I totally adore them. So that's actually instructive too, because I can look at them with love and compassion and just like, oh my gosh, they're so cute. And if I can have compassion for somebody who does exactly the same things that I do, maybe I could actually have compassion for myself.
In which case it would instantly transform. Right?
That's the most powerful thing. I mean, I think, all of the work that we do, we so often focus on others as if we need to be this lighthouse sending this beacon of compassion out, which is great. It's wonderful. Nothing to say bad about that, except that unless that also like starts a little bit further back, like it starts inside our heart so that it can fill us first, we have to be able to hold ourselves with the same compassion that we're trying to give to others, or it lacks authenticity, it lacks depth and strength.
Yeah, I sometimes think some of the, I wrote a poem the other day. It was really interesting. It kind of came out of the ethers and the line I really liked from it was that my own heartbreak allowed me to be present to the heartbreak of the world.
Yeah.
It's like until we can actually just kind of come down on our knees and be there for ourselves in those moments, we can't really be there for other people and that profound of a level of compassion, right?
No, and I think there's some resistance to recognizing that because it requires us to be vulnerable.
Super vulnerable.
Like when we focus on others, we can like shut the door on ourselves and not look back, but it doesn't have that same, like as much as we all want to have an impact in the world, that impact is so magnified when we're willing to be kind of like part of the problem, like that we're in it as well, and it's not just it's that old doing versus being issue, right? It's kind of like we want to do for everybody else, but unless it comes from the be within ourselves, it doesn't have that stability.
Okay, so before we wrap up, and I can see we're going to have you on as another guest because it's just so good and juicy. But before we wrap up for this one, one more thing comes to mind, and that's, it's holiday time. What you're talking about, most people are going to be able to relate to right now because they're spending holidays with their families. Can you give any other examples of situations with your parents or with yourself, or as a sort of method or something to use when we go home to our parents and observe, or to our families, and there's this uncle doesn't get along, whatever those family stories are. What are some tips that you have for people, or stories that you have that we can put into practice to actually shift things on the inside?
Yeah. I think the thing that's been most helpful to me lately is that if I'm in the house and in the situation, like it's almost like you've got blinders on and you get sucked in. And I make sure that every day I go outside and I take a bike ride on my dad's old bicycle. He's got this bike that he put like 25,000 miles on, and he still rides it sometimes at age 93. But I take it out every day and I ride through the trees. And I've been really into lately, like being aware of the 5 elements. And so I just kind of consciously run through them in my mind. Like I notice the earth and the water and the sun, which is like fire, and the trees, which are wind and vitality, and then the space. And so I just kind of, those 5 things, just kind of clue into them and recognize my connection to the elements, because it changes me from having that blinders on, like my world is too small, to getting outside. Even if it's like, during the holidays, you step outside to look at the sky and notice the earth. You're standing on the earth. So you've got that unconditional love and support of the earth always there. And then the vastness of the sky always there. And then all of that other stuff in between with the trees, the plants, the flower, whatever you've got, even if it's snow, you've got the water element, you've got everything around you. And it's holding you in this vast world. And so you've just got to remember to step outside and open up to the vast world and recognize how these 5 elements, we have actually a specific meditation that goes through the 5 elements outside the body and inside the body, which people have found super helpful. And I think I'm going to start doing a group meditation class and probably teach that as well as some other things. We're going to do it online so that people could do it anywhere. But even just stepping outside and becoming aware of those things for the moment. And what I like to do then is notice the space. Because when I'm getting triggered or when I'm getting like too sucked into things, I've zoomed in on small stuff and objects. And when I open it up instead, like open up my vision to the periphery and notice things in all directions, like space above me, space to the right and the left behind me. And I notice the space instead of just the things in it, then I get this feeling of expansiveness that breaks that feeling of having blinders on.
I actually use that like right at that moment when things are really, really tough too. Like if you're at a holiday dinner and some kind of crazy conversation arises. I mean, I think what you're saying is this is how you maintain sanity, and you just give yourself some you time and then as you practice that, you become really adept at what that feels like, so that when you're sitting there at the holiday dinner and something really crazy happens, you can notice the space, right? Or if somebody starts screaming at me, I sort of root down and then also notice the space in the room.
Yeah. It doesn't even have to be outdoor space, because there's indoor space too. So, and it just changes the perspective, where suddenly you're not, one-on-one in that hard conversation or that, combative space. It's like, it's almost like a zoom out, and then I think life must have been so different when everybody used to go outside every day and see the stars, because you would just innately have a sense of how vast everything is, and our little nitpicky things just fall away, right?
Our little nitpicky things, a little gnawing voice in your head, right?
Things we get caught up on.
And then, okay, so then one last question about when you were saying be willing to become part of the problem. Anything else you can add to that?
That's hilarious. I never said that before. Well,
it's pretty genius.
It's funny because I know that I have a particular, I just want to do it right. I just want to do it right, and it's a really pure, beautiful aspiration, but it's such a trip up. And in wanting to do it right, there's like the flip side of that coin is not wanting to admit I'm wrong or not wanting to be wrong. And so if I admit I'm part of the problem and I have the same things going on as every other human being, it's vulnerable. It's like endangering that self-view of like, damn it, I just got to get it right. Like I'm trying so hard. I mean, at one point I recognized that, I recognized that I do have a perfectionist streak. And it made me laugh because I realized I had never viewed myself as a perfectionist because I'm not a perfect perfectionist.
Oh my God, that's deep.
Like, oh my God, like there's certain things I can totally let them go. Like, oh yeah, that's cool, no problem. And then certain things I am like obsessive about. But, but part of that is just wanting to be beyond reproach. Like I thought if I did it right, nobody could slam me, right? Nobody could fault me. Nobody could blame me. And then, newsflash, it doesn't work that way. It honestly doesn't matter how
they'll blame you anyway.
They do. I mean, that's when I realized that. It was like, oh my God, then I can totally let that thing go because I can't protect myself that way. I thought I could protect myself by being perfect. And the fact is that even if you're perfect, people will still blame you and see fault in you. So, hey, let that number go.
So is it safe to say then that our beautiful, wondrous, beloved parents, just simply because they're older, are more, like you said, exaggerated, more pronounced qualities? So we can, during the holidays or the family time, if there are certain things we absolutely love or certain things that trip our triggers, we can reflect back, because you're using this as a practice. You're using your time with the parents as a practice to see, where do I have that in myself and how can I work with that, right?
Right, because rather than when that thing arises that irritates me, rather than blaming them for it or criticizing or judging them for it, I use it as the reminder to ask the question, oh, interesting. Where am I doing that? How am I doing that? How can I not do that? And using it instead of to go after them, to reflect it back, to unravel those things in myself. Because one of the things I've realized is if you're going to do it now meaning every moment. Don't wait, because it does get more and more ingrained the older that you get. And so it's a kindness that they're showing me now while I still have time to change it. I can't fault them for where they are now. It's not my my business, but it's giving me the opportunity to say, oh, wow, cool. That one I can see that now, I can change it.
I mean, I suppose we could use that practice with anyone. Doesn't necessarily have to be family, but anytime somebody triggers us, it's like, why is that bothering me?
Right. I mean, because if it is bothering me, that does mean that I have something there that I can look at.
And so all of these practices you're talking about can also lead to enlightenment.
For sure. For sure.
So it's like bringing, how people used to say, like bringing yoga off the mats. It's like bringing your meditation off of your cushion into awareness.
And that is the point. I mean, because the point is not that you want to spend 24 hours a day on your cushion. The point is that, we spend enough time on our cushion so that in Tibetan, the word for meditation means to become accustomed to. It's not like some, mythical, magical word that, means something, it means to become accustomed to. So it's like, oh, well, I have this time on the cushion where I can become accustomed to reframing things in a way that doesn't blame others,
learning to sit with.
Yeah, learning to be with what's uncomfortable, etc. Because the whole point is that then that boundary between the cushion time and the real lifetime dissolves, so that I can apply this insight to everything that I do, and that everything becomes a practice, everything becomes an opportunity.
For moment-to-moment awareness.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I love this conversation, of course. And I just want to say that if you as a listener are also loving this conversation, the way you can find out more about chocolate is weiofchocolate.com, about meditation and awareness practices that Lisa teaches at weiwisdom.com. And the way is spelled like in LOTUSWEI, WEI. So weiofchocolate.com, weiwisdom.com. And if you go to the Wei of Chocolate website, you can get some of the more like written details around the secrets to healthy chocolate. And then the Wei Wisdom site will have information, or if not now, then coming soon, of your group meditation classes. Is that right?
Yeah. We've got a place to sign up for a group meditation class I'm going to hold on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Virtual?
Virtual, yeah. It's all online, and so we can sit together. I've had really nice experiences doing one-on-one sessions with people online all over the country. And so now I want to do a group one so that we can get together and practice together. And if the Saturday morning time doesn't work, I'm actually looking for a second time. So if people want to either email me or, contact me, then we can figure out when is another time that we can meet.
That's wonderful. So, and we'll have all those resources on the blog post for the podcast. And in closing, anything you can add in terms of words of wisdom or advice that you often find yourself giving to others, or just anything that springs up from your heart in this moment that you want to share?
What I've been doing lately is something I'm calling intuitive cycling, like when I go out riding the bicycle. And I used to always go in a certain pattern, and I knew how far I went, and I had an app that would tell me how fast I went, how many miles I went, and the route that I went. And then they discontinued the app. Beautiful, because it liberated me in a way that I didn't anticipate. And so now what I do is when I go out and ride the bike, I don't make any decisions about where I'm going until I get to an intersection. And then I look for just the barest kind of whisper of an indication about which way I should go. And so I've been just playing with it. And part of it is like breaking that idea of like doing it right or getting it right, or, getting a certain result, and just kind of playing with it. And it's been so fun. And I think you could do intuitive cycling with anything. I had the idea, like, oh, gee, maybe I could do that with my business. Oh, I could do that with my this or that. Just see. But I'll tell you, the unexpected result of that, of the intuitive cycling thing, is that very often when I go out now and I get just that like slightest whisper of where to go, I've been encountering owls. And I've seen these owls like more times than I think is possible. And the other night I was late going out, And I just was going to make a really short one, but I kept hearing that little whisper, about this way, this way, this way. And as soon as I defied, like I should have gone home. Oops. I should have gone home because the sun was setting. And I went one more. And I knew I was going to go one more. There was the owl. And it was right there on a dead tree. And the owl was watching the sunset. And the sky turned this incredible, like it was on fire. The sky was so beautiful. And I just felt so privileged to be with the owl and the sunset, and just so like tickled and joyful that I had listened to that voice. And so I think that's a fun thing to try in whatever way, fits in with your own life.
That sounds amazing. Oh, I can think of so many ways that we could put that into action. That's beautiful.
I'll send you the picture. I took a picture of the owl watching the sunset. Maybe you can link it to the...
Yeah, we can put it in the blog post. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to The Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard, or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.